Hello learners, in this online lecture of the module, we will discuss news sources and its types such as primary source, secondary source, off the record source and on the record source. In addition, we will also discuss the importance of news sources in the process of news writing. We will also explain identification of sources for getting information. Furthermore, we will describe attribution and how to attribute sources in the news articles. We will also discuss guidelines for attributing various types of news sources in detail. After completion of this video lecture of the module, you will be able to understand news sources and various types of news sources such as primary source, secondary source, of the record source and on the record source. In addition, you will also be able to explain the importance of news sources in the process of news writing. Furthermore, you will also be able to identify news sources for getting authentic information. You will also be able to explain attribution and how to attribute sources in the news article. You will also be able to discuss guidelines for attributing various types of news sources in detail. So, let us explain news sources first. There are plenty of information coming from around the world, such as people are being born or dying, banks are being robbed, roads are being constructed, companies are making profits or losses, storms are destroying homes, courts are sentencing people to jail or freeing them, scientists are discovering new drugs and so on. Every minute of every day, something newsworthy is happening somewhere in the world. Even if you are a journalist working in a small country, something newsworthy is probably happening in your country at this moment. Your job as a journalist is to get information on those events and present it to your readers or listeners. But you cannot be everywhere all the time to see those events for yourself. So, you need other ways to get information on all those millions of events you cannot witness yourself. When someone or something provides you with information, you call them a source. Anything that provides news information for a period of time is said to be a news source. News source can be a moving person or a still document, such as people who have witnessed the crime would come to the news source, or documents found at the suicide crime spot would be considered as a news source. There are several news sources such as official documents, government officials, witnesses of the crime, the victims itself, etc. News sources are required for both the journalist and for the audiences. Here we are going to discuss the news sources for both. Sources of information can be people, letters, books, files, films, tapes, in fact, anything which journalists use to put news stories together. Sources are very important if you want to report on event or issues and explain the word to your audience. Journalists try to work as much as possible for their own observations, but this is often not possible. Some events or issues are finished before the journalist gets there. Others are like plants which only show their stem and leaves above the ground. The all important roots are hidden from sight. Journalists who only report what they see can miss much of the news unless they have sources to tell them of more detail or other aspects which are out of sight. According to Shoemaker 1996 and McQuell 1994, there are a multitude of factors that tend to condition the acceptance of sources as bona fide by investigative journalists. Reporters are expected to develop and cultivate sources, especially if they regularly cover a specific topic known as a beat. Beat reporter must be cautious of becoming too close to their sources. Reporters often, but not always, give greater priorities to sources with little experiences. For example, sometimes a person will say they don't want to talk and then proceeds to talk if that person is not a public figure. Reporters are less likely to use that information. As a rule of thumb, but especially when reporting on controversy, reporters are expected to use multiple sources. There are several types of sources. So, let us discuss all sources one by one. Number 1, primary source. A primary source is a person who provides the original and direct information of an event, news story or development to the journalism for writing news stories. Journalists rely on primary sources to gather first-hand information, quotes and data to produce accurate and reliable news reports. These sources play a crucial role in the news writing process as they provide the foundation for a well-rounded and credible news story. Primary source might be a man who fell 1,000 meters from an aircraft and lived to narrate the event, or a union leader who is leading wage negotiations. They are usually the best source of information about their parts of what happened. They should be able to give you accurate details and also supply strong comments. For example, journalists conduct interviews with key individuals involved in an event or issues. These could include eyewitnesses, experts, officials, or those directly affected by the news event. Information obtained directly from press conferences, original documents such as leaked memos, official documents, letters, or emails can be used as primary source in investigative reporting. Journalists may observe events or situations directly, gathering first-hand information to report on the scene. Number 2, secondary source. A secondary source refers to information that is derived from or based on primary sources. Unlike primary sources, secondary sources do not provide first-hand or direct information. Instead, they analyze, interpret, or summarize information from primary sources. Journalists often use secondary sources to gain additional context, background information, and experts' analysis to complement their news reporting. Secondary sources are those people who do not make the news, but who pass it on. The official police report of an incident or comments by a press officer can be called secondary sources. For example, previous news articles published by reputable media outlets can serve as secondary sources, providing background information or context on a particular topic or event. Commentary and analysis from experts, scholars, or commentators can provide insights and interpretations on events, issues, or trends are also considered as a secondary source. Journalists may refer to reports, studies, or academic research that analyze and interpret data from primary sources, adding depth to their reporting, while documentary films or television programs that offer analysis and background information on a specific subject can serve as a secondary sources. Books or articles that recount historical events or the lives of individuals can provide secondary information to enrich news stories. Number 3. On the record sources. All statements are directly quotable and attributable by name and title to the person making the statement is called as on the record source. This is the most valuable type of attribution. For example, the US has no plans to invade Iran, said White House Press Secretary Jim Smith. Number 4. Of the record. An of the record source in news writing refers to a person who provides information to a journalist on the condition that their identity and the information they share will remain confidential and not be attributed to them in any way in the published article or news report. Importance of sources. The importance of sources in the process of news writing cannot be overstated. Reliable and credible sources are the foundation of responsible journalism. They play a crucial role in ensuring the accuracy, credibility and integrity of news articles. Here are some key reasons why sources are essential. Number 1. Accuracy and verification. Sources provide journalists with first-hand information and facts. Verifying information from multiple credible sources helps to ensure that the news being reported is accurate and reliable. Journalists must cross-check information to avoid the spread of misinformation or false news. Number 2. Credibility and trust. Readers, viewers and audiences place their trust in journalists to provide them with truthful and unbiased information. Citing reputable sources adds credibility to news stories and enhance the trustworthiness of the media organization. Trust is the backbone of any journalism profession. Number 3. Objectivity and balance. Diverse sources offer different perspectives on a story, which helps journalists present a balanced and objective view. By seeking input from various sources, journalists can avoid bias and provide a comprehensive picture of the topic they are covering. Number 4. Accountability and transparency. Relying on credible sources allows journalists to be accountable for the information they publish. If questions or concerns arise about the accuracy of a story, journalists can point to their reputable sources as evidence of their diligence and commitment to accurate reporting. Number 5. Legal protection. Using reliable sources helps protect journalists from potential legal issues such as defamation or libel claims. If the information is accurate and attributed to reputed source, journalists have a stronger defense against legal challenges. Number 6. Depth and context. In-depth news reporting often requires information beyond what is publicly available. Credible source can provide insights and context that may not be readily accessible to the general public, enriching the quality of news stories. Number 7. Ethical responsibility. Journalists have an ethical responsibility to uphold professional standards and the Society of Professional Journalists Code of Ethics. Citing credible sources and avoiding anonymous or unreliable ones is essential to maintain ethical integrity. Number 8. Accountability of sources. just as journalists must be accountable for their reporting. Sources also have a responsibility to provide accurate and reliable information. Holding source accountable helps prevent the dissemination of misleading or false information. The sources are the backbone of responsible news writing. Journalists must diligently verify and attribute information from credible sources to ensure the accuracy, objectivity and integrity of their reporting. By doing so, they can build and maintain the trust of their audience, ultimately contributing to a well-informed and educated society. Identification of news source. In our news writing process, identification process of sources is crucial for maintaining the credibility and integrity of a news content. Accurate and reliable sourcing helps journalists and news organizations to deliver trustworthy information to their audience. The identification process involves several steps to ensure that sources are legitimate and their information is verifiable. Here's how the identification process of sources typically works in news writing. Number 1. Gathering information. Journalists start by collecting information about an event, issues or topic which they want to cover. This can involve research, interviews, press releases, official statements, eyewitnesses, accounts and other sources of information. Number 2. Source evaluation. Before using any information in their news piece, journalists must evaluate the credibility and reliability of the source. They consider factors such as expertise of source, reputation and potential biases. They prefer primary sources, those directly involved in the event, over secondary sources. Number 3. Attribution. News writers must attribute the information they use to its original sources. Proper attribution provides transparency to the readers, allowing them to understand where the information came from and how trustworthy it is. Number 4. Anonymous sources. While anonymous sources can be used in some situations, they should be the exceptions rather than the norms. Journalists must have a valid reason for granting anonymity, and the information provided by anonymous sources should be independently verified whenever possible. Number 5. Multiple sources. When reporting on sensitive or critical issues, journalists try to corroborate information from multiple sources. This helps ensure accuracy and minimize the risk of publishing false and misleading information. Number 6. On the record and off the record. Journalists establish ground rules with their sources regarding what information can be used on the record, which should be attributed to the sources by name, while off the record, which should not be used for publication but can inform the reporter's understanding and on background that information can be used, but the source's identity is not disclosed. Number 7. Fact checking and verification. In the age of social media and rapidly spreading information, journalists must be cautious and about verifying the authenticity of photos, videos and information before including them in their news report. After gathering information from various sources, journalists should fact check the details to ensure accuracy. This involves cross-referencing information with other reputed sources. Number 8. Editorial oversight. Reputable news organizations have editorial process and standards in place to review and approve news content before publication. This includes reviewing the sources and the information used in a news piece. By following a thorough identification process, news writers can maintain credibility, avoid misinformation, and uphold the principles of responsible journalism. It is essential to prioritize accuracy, transparency, and accountability, them reporting the news to public. Attribution of sources. Attribution means telling readers where the information in a story comes from. Attribution is extremely important in news writing. This process holds a great significance as it helps writer avoid adding personal opinions or biasness and ensures that all information can be traced back to its rightful sources, whether an individual or an organization. Writers must attribute anything that may not be considered common knowledge to provide transparency to their readers. Some sources are more credible than others. Here are some examples of attributions. Number 1. Attribution of quotes. Attributing quotes in a news story is essential to provide proper credit to the person or sources from whom the information or statement originated. Attribution adds credibility to the reports and helps reader understand the context and reliability of the information presented. There are two types of quotes attribution, that is direct and indirect quotes attribution. Number A. Direct quote. We can use direct quote in two ways. First, we can write a quote like this: "The incident is under investigation, Mayors said." Another way is, "The incident is under investigation, Mayor said, but it will be a long time before the investigation is completed." Number B. Indirect quote. We can understand indirect quote by same example. Mayor said the incident was under investigation. Another way use of indirect quote is Mayor said the incident was being investigated, but that it would be a long time before the investigation is completed. Here I am discussing some guidelines for attributing information and including quotations in news stories. These guidelines are as follows. Number A. Use the person's first name and last name, write full name of person for identifying them by name for the first time in the news story. This is also called first reference. Afterward, use only the last name of the person. Some newspapers use titles such as Dr., Mr., Mrs. Before the last name such as Dr. Gautam. However, the predominant practice is not to use courtesy titles. You do not have to include the last name of the person each time you reference the person. You can use a pronouns he or she every other time instead of using the last name of the person. Number B. Use quotation marks around a word or group of words when someone has spoken or written those exact words. Number C. Each direct quotation should be its own paragraph. This may mean that the paragraph with a direct quotation is only one sentence. Number D. Use said for attribution. Many people try to use a different word such as stated, noted, or said is a neutral word. Use it. Number 2. Attribution of number. In general, spell out whole number 9 and below such as the 9, while you should use figure for 10 and above numbers. Millions and billions are used with round numbers. For example, 2.3 millions, Age are always written in number. For example, the 2-year-old boy John is 21-year-old. Number 3. Attribution of facts or opinion. It is difficult to identify what people say as the truth. Attribute it as a fact or opinion that someone said. You do not have to prove or disapprove the truth of words. Let people judge it. For example, striking students who miss exams will be given fail marks. A student quoted as a statement of Vice Chancellor. Number 4. Attribution of clear and undisputed facts. The High Court bench of 2 judges has found a man guilty of rape. They sentenced him to 12 years rigorous imprisonment. Remember, accurate attribution is crucial in news writing. Always verify quotes and the context in which they were spoken before including them in your story. Misattributed quotes can lead to misinformation and undermine the credibility of your reporting. Guidelines for attributing of sources.
Number 1. Generally, newspapers use attribution at the end of sentences, which is called dangling attribution. Number 2. Focus on the speech of the speaker because the audience wants to know who is speaking. Number 3. Speech is more imp than the speaker. So attribution should come at the end of the quote. Number 4. Don't confuse in the case of the double speaker. Use text attribution along with visuals of speakers. Number 5. Avoid using partial quotes. It confuses the audience. For example, said sing. Number 6. First time use attribution at the end of a sentence. Later you should use it at the start of the sentence. Number 7. You can attribute direct or indirect quotes. Number 8. First time, you should attribute the full name of the speaker. And further attribute the last name of the speaker. Number 9. Put proper words of the attribution, i.e., name, designation and association. Number 10. Don't use information that was previously cited elsewhere. Number 11. You should use said, urged, warned, suggested, asked, disclosed, according to. Number 12. Attribute facts and opinions that someone said. Number 13. You should use clear and undisputed facts. For example, High Court bench of 2 judges have found a man guilty of rape. They sentenced him to 12 years imprisonment. Number 14. In case of the same last name of 2 speakers, you should use the full name of the speakers in all attribution. Number 15. Use according to attribute stored sources like police reports, committees' recommendations, study reports, etc.
So learners, with this we have completed news sources and various types of news sources such as primary source, secondary source, off the record source and on the record source. We have also completed the importance of news sources in the process of news writing. In addition, we have also learned identification process of news sources for getting authentic information. Furthermore, we have also completed attribution and how to attribute sources in the news article. We have also studied guidelines for attributing various types of news sources in detail. Now, it's time to check your progress level. Write down the following questions and check your learning level by writing answers to those questions. To assess your learning level, we are providing you long questions. Give answers of the following questions. Number 1. What is a news source? Describe news sources with the example. Number 2. What is a news source? Explain various types of news sources with the example. Number 3. Discuss primary sources with the references. How is it different from our secondary sources? Explain it with the examples. Number 4. What is attribution? How to attribute sources in the news article. Discuss it with the example. Number 5. What is a news source? Discuss importance of news sources in the process of news writing.